Welcome into 5 Wide Fantasy. Today we're looking at wide receivers to target in every single round of your fantasy football drafts. We're going through 12 rounds here, 12 receivers to talk about. If you guys do enjoy today's video, we'd really appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button. Like the video as well. We got plenty more content coming to you this week. And at the end of this week, getting you ready for week 1 of the season. But we will have preseason thoughts on every single team in a video coming shortly. So I'm really excited about that. But today's video brought to you by the Stunt. And instead of rolling our usual ad, I do want to talk a bit about the Stunt, an awesome social media app that's built around for sports fans. We're posting content every single day on there, whether it's some early fantasy thoughts and thoughts on players you should be drafting or important stats and notes you should pay attention to, whether it's videos that we're posting, on our TikTok channel that we're also posting on the Stunt. There's plenty of exclusive content there. I'm hosting live rooms every single week. This week we're hosting today on Tuesday, which have already passed, Wednesday as well. So be sure to download the Stunt. Both the link on the App Store for both iOS and Android will be down below. Go check it out. Go follow OwnersBox on there. There's exclusive content for you guys. And our live room's a great way to interact with you guys. What we'll be looking to do as well later this week and throughout this week is rating some of your fantasy teams. So I included in our community post an email to send your fantasy teams to. We can talk about them, rate them, talk about ways you can improve, changes you could make during the season, any waiver wire ads you might want to target, and any other advice I can give you. So go download the Stunt. That is the best way to interact with us there. Would love to interact with you guys. So check out the link. It is down below in the description. Starting in round 1, a player obviously going very early here. It is Cooper Kupp of the Los Angeles Rams. What I love about Kupp going into this season is you look at last year, and I don't think there's any reason to think anything's going to change. He was the wide receiver 1 in fantasy points per game. Obviously missed a lot of time, didn't return on what his draft capital was last year, but his 18.2 fantasy points per game were better than Justin Jefferson's 17.9. He was on pace for 142 receptions, which would have been first in the NFL, and he was also on pace for over 11 touchdowns at the receiver position, which would have been second, and on pace for over 1,500 yards, which would have also been second. I don't see a lot changing here. As long as Matthew Stafford is healthy, he's going to continue to produce at a really, really high level and probably return on his ADP, even though he's going as the wide receiver 4. Even if Stafford misses time, Kupp has been a focal point of this offense, even with Stafford missing. So he's a player that I love in round 1 if I do miss out on the guys like Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase. In round 2, a player I've constantly been talking about, it's Amon-Ra St. Brown of the Detroit Lions. After TJ Hawkinson left, he was on pace to record 131 receptions, which would have been first in the NFL, more than Justin Jefferson. And he only scored 6 touchdowns last year, and that's where I think we're going to see some improvement and why he'll be even better than the wide receiver 9 ADP he has, even though he was the wide receiver 7 last year, I think. He only scored 6 touchdowns, but he was top 10 in red zone targets, so did get volume in that important area of the field. Jamal Williams' departure, that's 17 touchdowns from last season that are gone and need to be found. There's a real lack of target competition as well in this offense. You look at Jameson Williams missing 6 games. TJ Hawkinson's obviously gone. The rookie Sam Laporta looks to be the number 2 receiving option for this team, surprisingly. And then you look at, Josh Reynolds, Khalif Raymond. Those aren't high talent guys. Amon-Ra St. Brown posted a 32.3% target rate last year, which was the 3rd highest at the position. He's going to post over 100 receptions. I think this year he takes another step by scoring some touchdowns as well, because he's still a productive player in that area of the field and relied upon target for this team, and a team that was top 5 in points per game last season. Round 3, another player I love to talk about, Devontae Smith of the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles are a really interesting team to target in fantasy football this year, because in the first half of games, Philadelphia averaged the 7th most passing attempts per game, but in the second half, they ranked 29th. They were not throwing the ball at all because they had plenty of healthy leads and looking to run the ball to kill clock and end games. They didn't need to throw the football very often. They just wanted to take care of the ball and close out football games. They had 41 less completions than the league average. But when you look at this team in the first half, they were a team that threw the ball more than the league average. So just looking at the league average, 41 less completions, that adds another 11 potential receptions for Devontae Smith, a guy that could reach over the 100 reception mark this season as well. And you look at the last 5 weeks of last season, he was super productive. He was the wide receiver 3 over that span. He had more targets, receptions, yards, and touchdowns than A.J. Brown, and had a 4-1 edge over him in end zone targets as well. I think people are overlooking the fact that during the end of last season and also the postseason, Devontae Smith was the wide receiver 1 for this Eagles team. And I think he's going in the 3rd round and a player you absolutely want to have when you're building out a really strong start to wide receiver position. So in round 3, I'm definitely grabbing him. As we move into round 4, that running back dead zone, another wide receiver I love is Amari Cooper. Kevin Stefanski was giving him some of the most valuable opportunities in fantasy football, constantly designed to go his way. He was 5th in air yards, so seeing plenty of production down the field. He also had 16 end zone targets, which was 3rd at the position. I don't see Elijah Moore being a player that really impacts his red zone and end zone volume. I don't see a guy like Donovan Peoples-Jones being able to do that either. This is their guy here. Deshaun Watson was nowhere near his normal self when he arrived in Cleveland after the first 12 weeks of his suspension. Cooper was 6th in targets of 20 plus yards with Jacoby Brissett. And then he only, with Watson, finished 34th in the span with only 2 receptions of 20 plus yards. So if Watson gets back to who he is, which is being the best deep ball passer in the NFL in 2020 prior to his suspension and his leave from the Texans, this is a guy that can really explode and be an easy top 12 guy and quite frankly, a top 5 potential guy when you look at his volume, his consistency, and getting a bit of a better play at the quarterback spot can make him an even better option this year as he's a guy going outside the top 12. Round 5, I'm looking at Drake London. He hasn't been a player I've talked about a ton here, but in round 5, I do struggle to find a lot of players that I like, and London is very clearly my top target right now. With Desmond Ridder, he was really solid. He was top 10 in targets, receptions, and yards, so he's plenty productive with Ridder, and we know we're going to be getting Ridder for this season. He had a 29.4% target share on the season, which was 5th amongst all wide receivers. Really, really productive and really capable of demanding significant volume in this offense, even when Kyle Pitts was on the field for this team. This Falcons team gets the 2nd easiest schedule in the NFL. I think that could lead to more scoring for them, obviously, and as well, we get that improvement in the touchdown department where he only scored 4 touchdowns last year. But again, this is a really talented player, 6'4", can be a dominant red zone target for this team. So I do expect another great year from Drake London and one to improve upon from his rookie season. Round 6, I'm looking at Chris Godwin. I'm not so sure the drop-off will be as substantial as people think moving from Tom Brady to Baker Mayfield. Brady was a guy that was absolutely terrified of being sacked. Despite having the worst offensive line in football, I would say he was pressured the least in the NFL, just 19.4% of his dropbacks. So I think Baker Mayfield's a guy that's definitely more willing to stand in the pocket and will not target running backs at anywhere near the rate Brady has in his career and in his time in Tampa Bay. They moved also to Dave Canales as the OC. I still think this is going to be a pass-happy offense, but if you look at his time in Seattle, that's a team that wasn't targeting their running backs at anywhere near this type of rate, and Godwin will be that constant safety valve for Baker Mayfield. He posted 104 receptions last year, and that was 6th at the position. The volume will be there. He's in those intermediate areas of the field. He consistently demands a high target share. Meanwhile, Mike Evans is a guy that's struggling to get to that 20% target share rate. So this is Chris Godwin's offense in the pass game. This team won't be able to run the ball effectively, and they will lean on Godwin a ton. I love his volume. I love his floor. Round 6 is a perfect place to target him. Now we move to round 7 with Christian Kirk. Kirk is a player that I think a lot of people are overlooking because of the arrival of Calvin Ridley, but there's plenty of room in this offense for both Ridley and Kirk to be productive in year 2 of the Doug Peterson system for Trevor Lawrence, which I think Lawrence can take yet another step. And it's not like Kirk was a guy that benefited from complete lack of talent, posted an elite target share. He had a 23.2% target share, which was 24th at the position. So I think that's one he can recreate again this season, even with Ridley in town, because you look at Zay Jones, you look at Evan Ingram. Like, I think Ridley will obviously eat into Zay Jones' opportunities and volume significantly on the outside, while Kirk is a player in the slot that's a really important piece of this offense and a reliable target for Trevor Lawrence, both when Kirk was there last year, but also in his rookie season prior with guys like Dan Arnold as well. So this is an area of the field that Trevor Lawrence has been extremely productive. He had one of the best passer ratings and one of the best PFF passing grades in the middle of the field, and that is where Kirk lives as the slot guy for this team. And I think it's a player that, he's the wide receiver 11 last year. He's going now as the wide receiver 30. I do expect, he maybe doesn't reach the same performance he did last season as a top 12 guy, but the wide receiver 30 in this offense that I think is going to be very good is a little disrespectful for a player that's also pretty good after the catch and also even from the slot, able to create explosive plays downfield too with a pretty decent ADOT. So I really like Kirk. I think, again, a player being overlooked and one you should be grabbing in round 7. In round 8, probably my favorite middle round to late round target, and maybe one of my favorite fantasy receivers this season in the preseason, is Jahan Dotson. He was the wide receiver 11 in fantasy points per game in the final 6 weeks of the season. Really took an elite step here, and his opportunities also seem very elite. This offense is going to be throwing the ball probably at a near 10% increase compared to last season with the coordinator change of Eric Bieniemy, but he was a guy that was had the 5th highest ADOT amongst receivers with 50 plus targets, pairs up with Sam Howell, who consistently was a top 15 guy at the quarterback position in college in deep ball pass attempts. He had 36 touchdowns of 20 plus yards in his 3 seasons at UNC. Then you look at the way that important people to me are talking about this guy. Matt Harmon's reception perception. Love what you see from there in terms of his success rate against, he was at an 80.1% success rate against zone coverage. His success rate was in the 87th percentile against press, and that was an area I was a little bit concerned about for him. And top 10 in contested catch rate. This is a guy who posted, 7 touchdowns last year with pretty minimal volume with the injuries in this offense, or with the injuries for himself with this offense. So if this offense is a little bit better in the passing game, higher volume, he's on the field as well. His ability to demand or to score in the red zone is elite. If that continues and you look at what he can do downfield on explosive plays, there's a recipe for extreme success for a guy going in the 8th round. In round 9, there is no way I'm skipping out on Courtland Sutton. He is someone that could go a little bit earlier now with the Jerry Jeudy news. I'm willing to take him in round 8. I'm probably willing to reach on him in round 7 because I've talked about this at length throughout the preseason. Sean Payton comes in as head coach. This is a substantial impact on his fantasy value. Joe Lombardi leaves Los Angeles as well to reunite with Payton, and the ex-receiver is the most valuable piece of this Lombardi-Sean Payton offense. Michael Thomas in New Orleans, he posted, I believe, 4 straight top 12 receiver seasons. Mike Williams had an extreme level up with Lombardi. He was the wide receiver 10 in 2021 and the wide receiver 20 in 2022, despite missing time as well. Williams went from a career-high 90 receptions before Lombardi arrived in Los Angeles to 129 in 2021. He was the focal point of their offense, and he posted 93 in 2022 while missing 4 games as well. So he would have reached that 100 number as well in the season prior. So Jerry Jeudy's going to miss some time. Courtland Sutton in his role in this offense is substantial for what this team's going to be doing this season. I love Sutton. He's a guy I have well ahead of where consensus is on his ADP and his ranking amongst wide receivers. There's a really rosy outlook for this guy coming into this season as a more reliable target and a player that gets more volume and less downfield inconsistent targets compared to seasons prior. So love Sutton in round 9. We move to round 10, and I love Zay Flowers. He's a player I've definitely been talking about quite a bit as well. This offense is going to see some major changes. People have been talking about this at length in the preseason as well. Todd Monken at OC leaves the Ravens going into 11 personnel at a potential 40% increase. They were just 12% in last season. In Todd Monken's last season, Colin plays in the NFL, it was over 56%. So there could be a more than 40% increase in 11 personnel, which means getting potentially 3 wide receivers onto the field. That's going to lead to about 20% increase likely in wide receiver targets. And the reason I'm targeting Flowers over these other guys like a Rashad Bateman, like an Odell Beckham Jr., 2 players that just haven't proven to be able to stay on the field, and Flowers has never missed a game in his college career. And I think his speed and ability to create separation reminds me of what Marquise Brown did in 2021 with Lamar Jackson. I think that's what we get from Zay Flowers, a really explosive season, because he was at BC playing behind the worst offensive line in Power 5, and he was 12th in receptions of 20 plus yards. He had a 66.7% contested catch rate, which was really, really good. So he can make downfield plays. He's great at separating and has great, initial speed at the line of scrimmage to be able to create plays in short yardage and make plays after the catch. I love Flowers going really late here in round 10. Definitely don't miss out on it. In round 11, I'm usually more looking at running backs, taking flyers on some guys, looking at some handcuffs. But if you want to go wide receiver, feel like you need to add to the stock there. Sky Moore is the guy I'm looking to. Moore is set to take over Juju Smith-Schuster's role in this Kansas City offense. Juju posted 97 targets last season in that slot role, and he obviously missed a little bit of time too. And from the depth chart and what I'm hearing in the preseason, hearing from training camp, it looks like Sky Moore is going to be the wide receiver 1 in this offense. That doesn't necessarily mean he'll be a huge breakout player. We saw last season, nobody really broke out in a big way. It was just the Travis Kelce show mixed in with some significant running back receiving volume from Jerick McKinnon too. But I like year 2 of a receiver from the MAC, that lower level group of 5 conference where it's a little bit more difficult to acclimate to the NFL. He's got a full season now under his belt. Heading into year 2, I like the sophomore potential breakout here, and we're getting him at a great price in round 11. Finally, in round 12, there's been usually when I get this kind of negativity from a guy in the last few weeks leading into the season, I'm looking to avoid him. But Jameson Williams, he's going around 12. I think there's the juice here is worth the squeeze when you look at his ADP. And this offense, there's just so much here for Jameson Williams to be able to step into. And when I'm looking for players in this type of area of the draft, I'm just looking at talent. And Jameson Williams is a freaky talent when he's on the field. But this is one of the league's best offenses. I mentioned it with amon-ra. Top 5 in scoring offense, 26.6 points per game. Good passing volume to be able to support multiple wide receivers, multiple pass catchers. They threw the ball on 35 times per game last season, which was top 12 in the NFL. And you look at how they spread out their targets to underwhelming talents last season. I mentioned Josh Reynolds. He had 56 targets. I mentioned Khalif Raymond. He had 62 targets. DJ Chark is gone, 51 targets. TJ Hawkinson is gone, 43 targets. That's 212 total targets spread out to all those guys, 94 of which are gone. Sure, Sam Laporta could post, 80, 90 targets, maybe, but Jameson Williams, when he's back, you're getting the discount here of obviously his suspension. He is a really, really talented player that can make explosive plays that I kind of want to have and sit on because I'm really interested to see what he's capable of doing in year 2 with that full extra year removed from his ACL tear in his final college season. So I like him in round 12. Those are my favorite targets for every round of your fantasy football drafts. 12 players you can look to this fantasy season. Guys, again, if you enjoyed today's video, would really, really appreciate it if you did hit that like button just down below on the video. Hit the subscribe button. Like I said, post notifications on so we can get those 32 thoughts, one on every team as we head into the start of the NFL season, finishing out the preseason. Thank you guys so much for watching. We will see you on the next one.